Can you guys hear anything when it says recording in progress or no?
The only thing I hear is it says recording in progress.
Same here,
okay.
and you've disabled sharing.
Damn it.
All right, so a little bit of technical difficulty there. We had a disconnect. I think we were basically talking about the Mar-a-Lago raid and the documents there. But
Yes.
Get through this.
yeah,
Yeah. That's pretty good. We could talk over it too.
Yeah, this is great.
it's like Shane's theme song right here.
Yeah.
I know, right? Although I would be a little more classy. I would say flaccid.
Yeah.
South Park Game of Thrones Wiener song. That's nice. Yeah, you have to send that link to me.
I will.
I'm gonna
So-
add it to my playlist.
Is that what they're saying that Trump had is basically Hunter Biden's stuff? Is that what the FBI is saying?
I was glad you said that because I was sitting there thinking you were still going with the floppy wiener thing. I was like,
Ah,
they saying
Well,
Trump had a floppy
like the
wiener?
the stuff at Mar-a-Lago, is that what you're referring
Right,
to?
yeah.
Yeah.
Is that, oh, I didn't know that.
So
What-
I've heard information about the documents or the picture staging that the FBI put together was staged, for lack of a better word, not fake, but they did it for a purpose because they wanted to show certain information. Shane, I think you have some images of that, right?
I do. Let me see if I can find that. I'm going through the files right now. There's so many real ones. It's hard to find the right one.
I know you're distracted a little by the Wiener song, so it's understandable.
I'm always distracted by
Wieners.
floppy wieners.
I'm not touching that comment.
Another
Boom.
Another
Oh.
quick thing that I heard though, that George Webb, another guy I listened to, he was saying that he has under the impression that Trump's information that Trump has that they were wanting is he's got COVID lockdown information and how it was all manufactured and they knew about the lockdowns, and so he was saying that's the information that they actually had, and it could actually come out. And this could be like some sort of a trap, and then they could say, well, hey, this is the information that he had, and he was able to legally have it because it was against state security or national security, one of those two. And so then he can then expose it or let everyone know due to this. So, but
Yeah, I was talking to
I don't
Doug
know.
previously, and we had I had heard rumors that it was actually the Iran deal files that were taken. It's supposed to hit. Everything's supposed to be a boomerang hit back over, and that but it talks about the 1.5 billion from the pallet and the 150 billion payout to Iran to build a nuclear facility. Once again, rumor, but I did find that photo, the doctored photos. Here we go. As you can see here, you guys see anything?
oh yeah, now we can.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Oh, that's the wrong doctored photo. So, let's see,
Well,
this is
It's family photo album.
it. Boom. So if we open this tab. There we go. So these are supposed to be the doctored pieces here. And from what I understand is the FBI actually brought some of their own docs to stage this photo and try to implicate Trump in,
Yeah.
something he didn't do.
So it takes me back a little bit, even as far back as day one of Trump's presidency, where you heard several left-wingers, Democrats, basically anybody on the non-Republican side, they were almost calling for Trump's head from day one, calling for impeachment. I wish I had one of those videos or quotes, but there were several politicians that were pledging basically to impeach Trump day one, day two of his presidency. It kind of struck me as odd that we just put this man into office several years back, and on day one, before he even has a chance to do anything, whether it be good, bad, ugly, indifferent, they're already wanting to impeach him. So in my mind, it's already an unfair playing field. They're going to try to take this man out, for one, because he's not a politician in the regular sense of the word, and he wasn't one of the boys in the club. Yeah, believe me, Trump was in his own club and had plenty of influence in other realms, but he was an outsider coming in to their world, and they didn't want that. Scared as hell. And I think they probably had good reason to be. But even from day one, where they were trying to get rid of him, they go back all the way to, let's see, what is it, 2016, the Russian collusion hoax, which has now been shown, if you do just a little bit of research, that it was all manufactured evidence. And
Paid for.
Yeah, paid for. The Steele dossier, right?
Mhm.
Traced back to the Clinton
Receipts.
Foundation.
Yeah.
So obviously, stuff that was put out there to try to get him smeared and trying to get him impeached. So that was another one. And the actual impeachment trial, the first one was I had to look this one up, 2020, when, if you remember back when he was talking to Ukraine, and it was the secretly recorded call, that how terrible it was that he had asked Ukraine to look into Hunter Biden's dealings in the Ukraine. So, they came out with that. The call was released. Text of the call was released. Nothing stuck. They go on to the next one, the January 6th, of course, the great big insurrection, supposedly, that Trump led by his comments at, I mean, he was what, a mile and a half away from the Capitol giving his speech. And even the exact words he says, go in peace, go protest in peace. Nobody wants to ever talk about that. Those words were never talked about in the January.
National
6th.
Guard was refused.
National Guard was refused. That's correct.
No, they literally cut that part of the video out, and everything you see on the news, they never play that. Like it's never, like he never said it.
Yeah. And in fact, I had to prove to a couple of people, because I said that. I go, well, he said go in peace. What? No, he didn't. He didn't say that.
Right.
Yeah. Here's the video. Here you go. Oh, well, that doesn't really mean go in peace.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. So, of course, now the January 6th, I don't even know if the committee is still meeting or if they're still doing it. It doesn't sound like anything coming of that. So that one they threw against the wall. It didn't stick. Then what's next? Mar-a-Lago, right? They have to raid Mar-a-Lago for all these documents that supposedly Trump had, and I think they've thrown out ridiculous things like he had the nuclear codes and all this top secret information that they had, that they knew, the FBI knew about the information because they'd been in contact with Trump for the time back to when he actually left office. They had information about all these documents that he had. And in my mind, if these documents were so important and they were so essential that they didn't want Trump having them, why did they wait for this period of time? Why did they wait for, the failure of the January 6th committee? Why did they wait for 2 months before the midterm elections? I mean, the timing of it, in my mind, is so obvious of why
Especially
they're doing
for
it now.
Dangerous nuclear documents.
Yes. If these were such important documents that Trump couldn't have, they could have done that day 2 after he left, day 1 after he left. They didn't go raid his home for that. And supposedly there's been conversations back and forth between Trump and his attorneys and the FBI all along the way. And I even heard that it was reported on, I believe it was CNN, that they had requested at one point to have the documents FedEx to them. That, okay, Trump and your team, just FedEx these documents to us and we'll close the case out. I'm thinking, geez, if these are such important documents, you're going to trust this to a FedEx courier? Now, I cannot corroborate this. I just heard somebody report it, that it was on CNN. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I got to laugh all the way from day 1 of his presidency to even now. There's 2 sneezes. Even now, when he's not president, they're still trying to smear him because they're completely afraid of this man and what he's going to do if he gets back in office. And I think they should be. I think they should be.
Well, the whole thing is just the whole him holding documents, like, what are you talking about? So if they were special documents, he could just photocopy all of them, keep them himself and then give them back.
Yeah.
And or if he was really hiding them, you don't think he could hide them better?
Yeah.
If I could hide them in my house, no one's gonna be able to find them. What are you talking about? It's so dumb. I mean,
So I think it's a very,
obviously set up or something. It just,
yeah.
it stinks.
it's very standard practice for presidents to have some of this kind
Right.
of information when they leave the office. I mean, if you go back to when Hillary Clinton was there and she got caught with all these servers set up with all this electronic, not only documents, but emails back and forth. And then, you know, she was trying to scrub her servers and destroy information, and she did. And
Yeah.
nothing happened to her. There was, I mean, there was a little bit of kerfuffle about it that came up, but you know, nothing happened to her.
Right.
So I don't know. This, I would say this is probably a bad precedent to be going after an ex-president for this kind of stuff. So we'll see. We'll see if this next ball that they're throwing against the wall hits and it sticks, or they're going to have one more. I mean, what's the next bullet in the chamber for them to try to take Trump down? I'm sure there's another one coming. So we'll see how that goes. Any more closing thoughts on Mar-a-Lago at this point?
No, everything I've heard is just rumor. So it's hard to say what they did it for, but it does remind us of our last conversation last week where we had talking about the boomerang. A lot of people are saying that it's staged and that information that they got is now legally entered into evidence, which, you know, I don't understand that argument, because if it was all declassified anyway, it should be able to be released to the public, you know. So I don't understand how that works. My supposition is, if you know, let's say you do declass a lot of stuff, well, you could declass all day long, but the media is not going to pick up. Nobody's going to put it out there, share it. They're not going to allow you to browse it up on the net. They're going to wipe it all clean. Then what's the point of declassifying it? It's not going to make its way to the people, or even people who actually know how to interpret it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes. It's still kind of up in the air about what they're going to do with this information they apparently pulled, or the documents they apparently pulled from Mar-a-Lago, or what they're going to try to do with Trump. I think they kind of overstepped their bounds or overplayed their hand a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. I did take a recent look at stock markets this week, and 401k levels and things like that have been going down recently. So it made me think a little bit about, you know, where are we going future wise as far as finances, financial markets, financial systems in this country. It almost seems like we might be at a crossroads here over the past few years and the next few years about exactly what money means. You know, the dollar has run the world for several years. It's the basis of most currencies when you're trading country to country. So if the dollar fails, like a lot of people think it might, what's next? What's next for the United States? What's next for the world?
Well, it looks like the way that they are going, they will probably implement CBDCs, which is centralized digital currencies. And if everything stays the same as it is currently, that seems like a no-brainer of what all the governments in the world will try to do, because obviously they'll have total control and total power of the financial world, and they could also control inflation and everything to that matter. So it seems to me that's what they're trying to go for, and that's what they're going for. That's what all this has been about. But that's what COVID was about. That's what lockdowns were about. That's what everything. This latest campaign trying to get Trump out because he screws up their plans. And so that's what I'm wondering is, are they still going to push forward and go for this plan even though it's not working like they would want. And so now there's big holes in their plan. A lot of people are becoming aware of what's happening. People have different opinions on what the money system is and what it should be. There's gold-based currencies that's been talked about. There's cryptocurrencies that are being talked about. But I think the best thing is that, yeah, people will now have options versus if we would have just went to a straight CBDC, nobody has any options. So then you're going to be forced into a system. But I think with these other systems, especially cryptocurrencies, we now have a way out. So we don't have to necessarily comply and do what they're forcing us to do. And so hopefully that's what our future will be, is a crypto system and or even a gold-based back system would be fine, but it would be difficult to implement, and especially if you're talking about the whole world too, then that makes it that much more difficult because then you got to rely on a third party as far as that goes. But yeah, I think they're going for a CBD system, and I think that they're just going to go for it. I mean, from everything that I've seen so far, it seems like that's where everything's headed, and they're trying to break the system. And like currently the Fed right now is raising interest rates, and they're really pretty hawkish. Just last week, Jerome Powell says, yeah, we're going to raise interest rates again to try and keep inflation down, which they're not going to be able to keep it down. So the system's going to break. And the EU is, they have highest inflation that they've had ever, just recorded. And also they're having huge energy issues, especially with the Russia thing, and then they're not going to have any gas this winter. Their electric prices are going up exponentially, so their financial system can very well collapse very soon, which will also affect us and the rest of the world if that were to happen. So I don't know, it's scary times in my opinion.
So talking a little bit about that CBDC that you mentioned, that stands for central bank digital currency. For those who don't know it, it's a little bit like a cryptocurrency, like a Bitcoin or Litecoin or Ethereum, something like that. But the difference being it's controlled centrally. So if you think about it, the United States government would control, if they created a CBDC called the digital dollar, that's kind of what it would look like. And because they control it, they can add more digital dollars into the system when they want. They can take digital dollars out of the system when they want. And in their control, they can control the price or the value of the dollar, or in essence, they can create money out of thin air. Now, they do that a little bit with the dollar the way it is now, where they just run the printing press and they create millions and trillions of dollars if and when they need it. It would be the same kind of thing, but it would just be a little easier, and it would be in digital format.
They'd also be able to control you as far as if you speak out against the government or something. All right, your account is locked. You're no longer able to get paid, purchase, anything along those lines. And if you think about the last time we had a president who talked about secret societies running stuff and trying to go off of the fiat currency, it was JFK. He was murdered. He put out the silver certificate, backed off of silver, and then he gave that speech. I think it was 7 days before he died, about this secret society that's trying to enslave your children. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard that speech. It's a great speech, and you can Google it. So Trump seems to be doing kind of the exact same things. As far as how we would implement a new currency, what do I think? I still think it'll be just maybe precious metal or a basket of goods backed. I'm not exactly sure how they do that. NFTs might come into play with that, but the only reason I really think that now is because you see countries that I would consider heavily vested in digital currencies are also hoarding gold. I'm not so sure about silver.
So what countries are those? Who's hoarding
China
gold?
and India in particular. They've got a big push for it. Not only their governments, but the populations purchase a lot of gold.
Russia
Now, if
does
you-
as well.
If you
What's that?
listen to Russia does as well.
Oh, sure.
If you listen to Bix Weir and some of his old videos, I guess it's probably just like his new videos too, because they seem to be all the same. But he talks about his theory of a big gold stash that the government has under its own control uh, in the Grand Canyon area, and he goes through all these theories about, you know, this gold's going to be there, and if and when we go to a gold back system, there's going to be this huge stash to make us rich. I don't know. It's
heard that-
interesting. Go ahead.
I've heard under the Vatican, it's just miles of gold that Trump has gone in and taken over and reappropriated for the people. And then there's also the rumor that they just found that gold hoard in Africa, where there's more gold there than has ever been mined off of the face of the earth. I don't know the exact numbers.
Yeah. You see, so you hear these stories about, you know, supposedly there's this huge deposit somewhere. So if you base a currency on gold, and then all of a sudden somebody has, you know, thousands, millions of tons of gold all of a sudden come to the surface, now they're more rich than anybody else in the world, kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know if those are true or not.
But even if all that gold exists, I mean, the supply and demand curve then comes into play, and you've got, you know, if you flooding the market with that much gold, wouldn't that be the same as flooding the market with that much fiat currency? You throw
Yes.
30
Yes.
million tons of gold into the market, well, then, you know, maybe just an ounce of gold buys a loaf of bread at that point, you know.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that was Bix Weir's whole theories of why the government hid it, because they found all this gold and it was a Grand Canyon actually. So he said if they brought it all out, yeah, it would kill the financial markets and everything would collapse. So that's why they did that. That's his theory anyway.
sure.
And whether if you base it on gold, or you have a fiat system like we have with the dollar now, where it's not based on anything, they just print more shit if they want to. It's kind of a system set up for fraud. It's a system set up for inequities at all levels. I think that's some of the arguments you've made, Kalani, in the past, where that's what's the beauty of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. There is a defined number of tokens or coins, if you want, inside each of those systems. So Bitcoin will only have so many coins in its lifetime. So it's a very limited supply. So you can't go out there and artificially change the price of Bitcoin. You could only do it through market. Now, right now, you can do it. You can fluctuate that price by manipulating the market.
Right.
Because I think there's a relatively small percentage of people that are in that market. And if you have a couple big whales that want to buy a shitload or sell a shitload, they're obviously going to move the price one way or the other.
Let me
So
ask you this, Doug.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So, because you're pretty, I would consider, financially knowledgeable. Let's say hypothetically, Kalani and I were going to try to manipulate something. I'm not sure if this is possible, but let's say he had a Bitcoin, and then I had a Bitcoin. Could we, over the market, sell to each other? Let's say Bitcoin was selling for $20,000, but could we go through and just keep selling ours back and forth to each other for $30,000 in order to raise that market up, just in a series of transactions over and over?
Yes. I think they already do that between trading pairs and different markets with cryptocurrencies. Now, I don't know if they're able to do it as well with something that has such a large market cap like Bitcoin,
Sure.
but some of the smaller ones, where some percentage-wise smaller transactions can move the market, can fluctuate the market much more easily. You can do that. You can even trade with yourself. Kalani can have 100 different accounts on 100 different wallets in different locations, and he can buy and sell to himself or trade to himself, and he can force prices based on that and on certain markets. I think that already happens.
Sure.
What you need to do in order to, I don't know if you necessarily ever eliminate that, but to help water it down a little bit, is you have a much wider base of people that are inside that market. So if you have 1,000 people in that market, you could easily fluctuate the price of something quickly. If you have 100 million people in that market, it's a lot more difficult.
Sure.
So in essence, the more people you have, the more stable cryptocurrency should become. That's in theory, because we haven't seen it in practice quite yet.
And the
So if
cost,
they were, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, well, I was gonna say, and the cost of transactions. I thought about this because Shane and I had this discussion before, and it's a good point, because I don't really know the answer to it, but like with Ethereum, sometimes their gas fees are super expensive. So that would be one way to stop that. So you couldn't high frequency trade if it was like $1,000 to exchange back and forth between exchange or between wallets, because you would go broke just trying to move the market. So that's could be one way. And I know Chainlink, which is another cryptocurrencies for people that don't know, they're an oracle that's supposed to set prices for that. So they might also be able to help. So then you can't sell it for a higher price or a lower price than what it's supposed to be. So that
If the
might,
market always anonymously chose the lowest price available, I mean.
correct, yeah. But I don't know any of these particulars for sure. But no, that is a good point.
Yeah, and I'm not against cryptocurrencies. It's just when I look at something like Bitcoin, I think, well, you've got these wallets that hold a vast amount, and were it to become a currency, how does that currency get dispersed? So,
Right.
Therefore, you've got these wells, you've passed all the wealth on to these big wallets, and then in order for, the regular families, the regular people are going to be using it as the currency, they would have to, be enslaved by the wells. And I mean, hypothetically, if the wells are like, well, we're only going to release, 1,000 Bitcoin into the economy, well, that if that's the currency, then you inflate on the other side of the decimal. So rather than 3 Bitcoin, because they're holding theirs, the market is short on Bitcoin. So therefore, rather than 0.05 Bitcoin equaling a price of bread, if you've only got so many in the market, it's now 0.0000005 Bitcoin equals a price of bread. And the more that those 10 Bitcoin are spread out amongst the larger population, the decimal point keeps getting until I believe there's a max there, but
Yeah, it's
it's
just
quite a large max.
it'll just be a store of wealth, kind of like, say, real estate. You don't have to, most of the wealthy people of the world own tons of real estate, but for a single family, you don't have to own real estate in order to purchase bread. So Bitcoin will just be a store of wealth, and only the wealthiest people, yes, you're right, will have Bitcoin and be able to use Bitcoin. But yeah, they'll have other smaller currencies like Litecoin or maybe even Digibyte that you'll buy loaves of bread with. And so that it'll all just be kind of like you said, like a basket of currencies as well. It's just stuff to store wealth, and just look at it that way, not that.
Yeah.
And obviously in
I still think
every
those
system
all-
you're going to have somebody who has more wealth than somebody else. There's no way you can start a system where everyone starts out with the same amount of wealth. It's just impossible to do. So you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, I think, but the only thing with the current coin, you still have the problem of distribution. Once again, with Digibyte, even Litecoin, right now versus Bitcoin, they look light. But if you were to switch, okay, well, we're using Litecoin or Digibyte for our common currency. Well, I've got a lot of Digibyte. You probably got a lot of Digibyte, but probably about 90% of the population doesn't have any Digibyte. So
Right.
once again, Digibyte then jumps up in price, and we become the holders where it's like, well, so there would have to be, I think, a new currency, hopefully not one of these government centralized controlled ones, that people could trust, and there'd have to be some level of distribution. And I don't think the people will go for anything but a fair distribution, and not at this point.
So let me ask this question. Like, in your pocket right now, how much cash do you have? Coins and
Probably
dollar
got
bills.
$100 in my wallet.
Connie, how much you have?
0.
Okay. I have 0 as well. Shane, you might be the old guy here. And let me ask you this question. When was the last time you wrote a check?
Now, I've written 2 checks this past week, but it had probably been, I don't know, 10 years.
So now, Kalani, how old is your oldest right now?
Probably like 27.
27. Okay. Do they carry around cash and do they write checks?
I know they don't write checks.
Yeah.
I probably little cash, if not, probably close to none.
So if you think back 10, 20, 30 years where all bills were paid from home, like using a check, you would physically write out a check, send it off to the utility company and pay your bill. Before that, and I'm talking like hundreds of years back, they didn't have checks and they didn't have paper money. This is back before paper money. What did they use? They
Coins.
used coins, right? Either silver, gold, a combination of precious metals, minerals to represent wealth. So on the one side, you have on the far extreme side, people trading goods and services in coins, gold, silver, things that they can actually keep their hands on. You move into paper money, you move into now checks that they've already come and seen their time, but you have paper representation of value.
Right.
You're not holding a dollar. When you write a check, you're not holding a dollar, right?
Right, but you're holding a representation.
A representation of it,
the
right?
Previous, so you had your $5 in gold, then you had your paper.
Right.
That was the equivalent, and then they took out the gold standard. It still was a debt-driven versus $5, which was based off
Right.
the 5 ounces of gold, and then your check was based off that $5. So the distribution at that point had been through history. So to do an artificial distribution, because I see where you're going, but in order to do artificial distribution, the only way we could do that if the system is falling and going to collapse like we think it is, and the dollar just dies, there is no previous iteration for us to base that off of. I would say, you could still say, well, this used to be the dollar, but once again,
Right.
we've already got Gigabyte and those guys. 90% of the people don't have that. They're not going to say, oh, well, it used to be worth $5, so we'll go ahead and try to.
All right. Let me extend my example here a little bit though. Okay, so now we're in the situation where paper money is still around, but checks are phasing out, right?
Right.
Let's fast forward. You want to fast forward 100 years, 2, 3, 4, 500 years?
However you like.
Where is the human race at that point? Are we interplanetary?
No,
Who knows?
but we're not using
Not even
gold and
hearing.
silver.
So at that point, that's kind of my point. That's like we've gone from one extreme of carrying around metal coins to the other extreme, which I see in the far future as interplanetary. You're not going to be able to send gold, silver, paper across many thousands of miles to some other planet. Now, so in my mind, this whole transition from one to the other, you still have silver, right? You still have silver coins, gold coins. You may not exchange them like you used to, but that still exists. You could exchange it for a dollar for goods and services. So you have dollars still, you have coins still. You could write a check. You could still write a check. So you have multi levels that are still in existence. Some are getting phased out, kind of filtering down. Some are getting bumped up. Cryptocurrencies are now introduced into that. They're getting bumped up. So for several years, probably for the rest of our lifetime, I see it as we're going to have many different levels of how we interact with a currency. Will the dollar be dead? Yeah, maybe.
Like that.
Yeah.
I could see it. However, if we're talking about like a economic collapse coming, I see that chain breaking. And then, it's sort of like the Weimar Republic, this is gone and we have to introduce something new, and we have to make sure everybody's got a piece to buy their bread.
Yeah.
And if we just say, well, John Joe has 10 million of them, he's going to give us 5. to use. Well, John Joe we just gave over our entire, economy to John Joe.
Right.
Because he already owns it all versus this organic flow from one to another that already has distributed, whether fairly or not into the pockets, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I certainly would agree with you if we have this nice organic, and nice organic, I don't even mean as something without hurdles and something without problems. But if we have an organic transition, that's going to be one thing. If we have a market collapse, that's going to be like an atom bomb. That's probably going to be something completely different.
and don't get me
So-
wrong, once GME takes off and I get $1 million a share for all my DRS shares,
Yes,
I may be buying some big numbers, but until it happens.
But it's basically going to be whatever works. And so right now, cryptocurrencies works. And so it doesn't need anything else. So in my mind, that's what the future is going to be. So you're not going to be running around crying, oh, this isn't fair. Well, I don't have this and he has that. It doesn't matter. Can you trade something for value? Does it hold value? Yeah. So that's what people are going to use. And if you have silver, you can trade it for like a Bitcoin. If you have 100 ounces of silver, there you go. You can keep your values still. But just crying about it because,
But
well,
do you
I didn't
really
start out with
think-
this.
If the economy collapses and there is no more currency, I think people are going to cry about it, and if they
Right,
don't,
but it's, you're gonna have to pick up
I
and
I
work.
think it would be naive to think I've got Bitcoin. If the economy collapses, I've got something of value, because you got 90% of people are going to be like, yeah, I don't care that you got Bitcoin. I think it'd probably fall even further. I think they're going to say cryptocurrency, I'm trying to feed my
Yeah.
family. I'm not going to try to set up this little wallet and do all this other stuff.
But if
I'm
it
going to
works,
trade what I can.
it's certainly a good conversation. I mean, I think we touched a little bit on it here, and
And once again, I'm not against it. Organically, it's got to be the way of the future, because it's the only logical step to truly have that ledger system in place where you know where everything goes.
so I would say at this point, tune in next time, because this discussion is going to be ongoing for sure. We've got plenty more to go. So that's it for tonight, boys. Thanks for the segment.